White Mountains aren't the tallest in the US, but anyone from New Hampshire will tell you they're among the deadliest. They cover a quarter of the state and part of western Maine, and they're known for their unpredictable, often brutal weather. A simple mistake, one that might not matter elsewhere, can easily turn deadly here. Locals have a saying: the White Mountains may not be high, but their weather is harsh and unpredictable. You can have calm, cool air at 800 feet, but just a few miles up at 1,200 feet, you might face 100-mile-per-hour winds and temperatures below minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit. To put things into perspective, the highest peak in this range, Mount Washington, stands at just 6,280 feet. Yet, it held the record for the fastest surface wind gust ever recorded, 231 miles per hour in 1934. That's faster than Japan's bullet trains, which top out at 200 miles per hour. And in February 2023, the mountain recorded a wind chill of minus 108 degrees Fahrenheit, the coldest ever in US history. In conditions like these, the mountains don't care if you're a world-class climber or a beginner. They can take your life over the smallest mistake. And that brings us to the heartbreaking story of Emily Sotelo, a young woman full of promise, later described by her mother as a shooting star, so brilliant and bright, yet gone too fast. Emily Sotelo was a 19-year-old sophomore at Vanderbilt University. In November 2022, she returned home to celebrate two special occasions with her family: the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday and her 20th birthday on November 23rd, just a day before Thanksgiving. To make the occasion even more meaningful, she set a personal goal: to hike more peaks in the White Mountains. Emily had only taken up hiking about 2 years earlier, but in that short time, she had become an avid climber. She had already summited 40 of New Hampshire's 48 peaks, towering over 4,000 feet, a remarkable achievement for someone so new to the sport. Now, with just 8 peaks left to complete the full list, she was determined to check off at least 3 more before her birthday. Confident in her past experiences and eager to reach her goal, she set out on what she thought would be another rewarding adventure. But fate had something else in store. With 40 peaks already under her belt and some wilderness survival courses to her name, Emily set her sights on Mount Lafayette, a 5,249-foot peak, via the Franconia Ridge Loop. The 8.1-mile trail was known for being both stunning and unforgiving. But on November 20th, she was ready to take on the challenge, or so she thought. What set this hike apart from her previous 40 wasn't just the terrain, it was the season. Every hike she had completed before had been in the summer. She had zero experience with winter hiking, and that difference alone could mean the line between life and death in any mountain range. In the unforgiving White Mountains, that line was even thinner. One miscalculation, one overlooked detail, and the mountains would swallow an unprepared hiker without mercy. As we'll soon see, that's exactly what happened to Emily on that fateful trip. On that fateful morning, November 20th, Emily's mother dropped her off at the Lafayette Place campground around 4:30 a.m., ready to take on the mountain. Her backpack contained the bare minimum: a banana, some granola bars, a battery pack, and a bottle of water. She had dressed for the forecasted 27-degree Fahrenheit cold, with long underwear, heated gloves, and a neck warmer. But what she didn't realize was just how unforgiving winter hiking could be. Her decision to wear low-cut trail running shoes instead of insulated boots, along with exercise pants and only a light jacket, left her woefully unprepared for the brutal elements. Worse still, she had forgotten a hat, an essential item that could have helped preserve her body heat in those extreme conditions. With no prior experience in winter hikes, Emily likely had no idea how quickly the weather could shift from manageable to life-threatening in the mountains. Unfortunately, she was about to find out the hard way. When Emily began her journey on the chilly, overcast morning of November 20th, she didn't think much of it. The Franconia Ridge Trail seemed like just another challenge to conquer. What she didn't know was that one trail advisory website had described the loop as extremely rugged, exposed, and difficult terrain, with potential winter conditions that included ice, snow, high winds, frigid temperatures, and even whiteout conditions. As we'll soon see, her lack of preparation would become painfully evident. The previous evening had brought snow, which continued into the early hours of November 20th, stopping just around the time Emily set off. The fresh layer of snow made the trail hard to follow, creating a disorienting path. At that point, Emily already had every reason to turn back, yet driven by either the thrill of adventure or a desire to check another peak off her list, she pressed on, still hopeful that she could finish the hike. Her parents, too, didn't think much of it at first. After receiving a text from Emily at 5 a.m., her mother began preparing the lunch Emily had requested for the day: quinoa, chicken, and papaya with coffee and water. As the morning wore on and the sun began to rise, her parents remained hopeful that the weather would soon improve. However, on Franconia Ridge, the conditions worsened. By 9:40 a.m., snow began falling again. Emily, determined to continue, pressed on. As the weather grew more intense, so did the reduced visibility. Unaware, Emily had veered off the trail and onto the northwest face of the mountain in the same dangerous conditions that nearly claimed the lives of a group of hikers in 2021. By 11 a.m., her mother, still awaiting an update from her daughter, sent another text. No response. Looking at the increasingly ominous sky, a sense of unease slowly crept in. As the hours dragged on without a word, countless what-if scenarios began racing through the family's minds. Just 3 months prior, Emily had returned late from a hike, which had caused some anxiety. On that occasion in August, Emily had emerged from the woods safe, though she had been concerned about a struggling couple she had passed on the trail. Perhaps back then, her parents had comforted themselves, thinking it was just another delay. But this time, something felt different. As the day wore on, Emily remained unreachable and nowhere near the area where she was expected to return. By the afternoon, her family's concern grew more urgent, and a search and rescue operation was swiftly set into motion. 20 search teams were dispatched, trudging through the harsh conditions on foot, battling wind speeds between 40 and 60 miles per hour, with temperatures plummeting to 3 degrees Fahrenheit. By this point, Emily, caught in the brutal winter conditions, must have felt completely exposed. She was woefully underprepared and lacked the experience to survive in such extreme weather. Her chances of making it out alive were rapidly diminishing. The hikers who had survived in 2021 had done so only through a miracle, managing to communicate their location to the rescue team after thawing their frozen cell phones in their armpits. Emily, however, had no such tools at her disposal. She had no compass, no way to navigate, and no equipment to start a fire. It must have felt like her time was running out. As nightfall descended, the search teams were forced to retreat, unable to continue in the face of snow, intense winds, and the overwhelming dangers of Mount Lafayette. The next day, on November 21st, with a brief clearing in the weather, the search resumed with the help of aerial assistance from a helicopter. Despite the renewed effort, the teams had to call it off again as night approached, with no new leads or signs of Emily. The breakthrough finally came on November 22nd, when search teams identified a potential location where they believed Emily might have veered off track. While investigating, they discovered what appeared to be Emily's tracks in the snow. They followed the trail, but conditions were far from easy. The snow was fresh, dense, and waist-deep in some areas. It took them a grueling 2 hours to cover just 900 feet in these treacherous conditions, but they pressed on, determined not to give up. A helicopter also spotted additional tracks down the route, and they began to find more of her personal belongings. It seemed like they were closing in on her. However, despite the growing optimism, they were forced to call off the search once night fell. The next day, November 23rd, which was meant to be Emily's birthday, the search team felt confident they were near the end of their journey. They decided to approach the location from multiple directions to maximize their chances. At 11:15 a.m., one of the teams finally spotted Emily, dead, just 3/4 of a mile from where she had veered off track. A New Hampshire National Guard helicopter was immediately dispatched to assist in transporting her body to the nearby Cannon Mountain ski area, where further arrangements were made for her recovery. In the aftermath, Emily and her family were deeply touched by the overwhelming support they received from the public. Her family, in a noble gesture, encouraged people to donate funds to the search and rescue teams who had risked their lives to find and recover Emily. The U.S. Fish and Game officials pointed out that Emily had been unprepared for the severe weather conditions, lacking critical gear such as a hat, boots, compass, map, and the means to start a fire, items that could have potentially helped her survive or escape the harsh conditions. Though the loss of such a bright, beautiful soul was tragic, the officials emphasized the importance of not underestimating the dangers of any mountain, especially the White Mountains. In a similar vein, another story of survival and the unforgiving power of nature unfolds in the tale of 8 female climbers who faced their own battle for independence on Lenin Peak, a 7,134-meter giant in Tajikistan. Click here to view their inspiring story of courage and resilience.